Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or The Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going in-depth into every single matchup of the week from Thursday Night Football all the way until Monday Night Football, and I'll be telling you guys whether I believe you should start the quarterbacks in every single matchup, or sit them, of course. But before we could get on into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel, and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below, and while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you do want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. If you have any questions about week number 8, never hesitate to leave a question down below in the comment section. I love to talk to you guys down there. And I would also like to let you guys know that we have a brand new Discord where we can all come together and talk about fantasy football. The link to the Discord is going to be down below in the pinned comment, as well as left in the description of today's video. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 8 quarterback start or sit decisions. We begin with Thursday Night Football, the Baltimore Ravens at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and in this matchup, Lamar Jackson is a obvious start. Now, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense entering the year was one of those defenses that I personally thought was on top of the NFL. I'm not saying that going into the year they were like the best defense in the league, but you definitely could have made that argument. Now, we're in week number 8. And we just saw the Carolina Panthers run a train on the Buccaneers defense. So I definitely think Lamar Jackson is in for a big bounce back spot here, because to start off the season, Lamar Jackson was legitimately on fire NBA Jam style. He looked like he could win the MVP award in the NFL, but recently he slowed down here up against the Buccaneers in prime time on Thursday Night Football. I think he bounces back. Tom Brady has been in for a bounce back game, what I thought would be a bounce back game the last couple of weeks. For weeks, I've talked about how, you know what, Tom Brady is still Tom Brady. He hasn't, just because he's 1 year older, fallen off the edge of the earth. He's still Tom Brady. He's going to figure this shit out. But now we're in week 8. I have thrown every single possibility of what's wrong and how he's going to fix it at the screen. I've told you basically everything, every single fucking excuse I could have possibly made. And now we're in week 8. He plays the Ravens. The Ravens defense isn't the best. So here's another excuse for Tom Brady. Maybe this is the bounce back game. But if I'm being completely honest with you, there are a lot of quarterbacks on this list that are listed as a start-worthy quarterback that I would prefer to start over Tom Brady at this point. Again, I don't know what's wrong. Maybe it's the divorce situation. I'm not trying to go into that because I don't know shit about it. I'm not Tom Brady, or I'm not in his family or something. If I was, he probably would want to kiss me like he kissed his son. But at the end of the day, I'm going to start Tom Brady, but I'm not very confident about that. Next up, we move to the London game. In this matchup, the Denver Broncos could be starting Brett Rippon. They could be starting Russell Wilson. Now, it came out today, as I'm recording today's video on Wednesday, that it is an 8-hour flight from Denver to England. And 4 of those 8 hours of the flight, Russell Wilson was stretching, doing high knees, all this stuff on the plane while his teammates were sleeping. This guy is a grade A fucking cornball. It is almost insane that I honestly believe that he is like a method actor. He plays some type of a character, because no sane human being does that. No one does. That makes absolutely no sense. I don't care if Russell Wilson plays, if he's healthy or not. The guy's played like absolute horse manure. I'm not playing him up against the Jags defense. So whether it's Wilson or Rippon, I'm sitting both Denver Broncos quarterbacks. Trevor Lawrence, if this was a better matchup, I would be willing to start him. I think he has earned the right to be a start-worthy quarterback in fantasy football, but this Broncos defense looks legit, so I'm not going to be starting him in this spot. Next up, we got the Carolina Panthers at the Atlanta Falcons. Now, PJ Walker definitely looked much improved last week going up against the Buccaneers compared to his matchup from the week before. And while this matchup is up against the Falcons, and maybe PJ Walker has an excellent game, I just don't really see him taking it over the top to where I really missed out on starting him, right? If I say he's a sit and he finishes as, say, quarterback 18, there's no sweat off my back, right? That doesn't seem like an idiotic take to say to sit him. If he finishes inside the top 12, then yes, I will look like a buffoon. But even up against the Falcons defense, I don't project that PJ Walker will do that. This team really does like to run the ball even without McCaffrey. Marcus Mariota, if you are in a deeper league, I think you can start him. He's definitely a fine start in a 2-quarterback league, but let's be honest, this team doesn't want to throw the ball at all. And it appears that Arthur Smith simply does not trust Marcus Mariota, because if he did, then why the fuck are they running the ball deep down in these games when they're losing. Why would they do that unless they think Marcus Mariota is cooked? And then my other point on this is if they think Marcus Mariota is cooked, then why is Marcus Mariota the starter? Why don't they pivot to the rookie? This situation is incredibly confusing for all of these Falcons weapons. Aside from Cordarrelle Patterson, who will probably be returning next week and be a top 12 running back, regardless of who the fuck the quarterback is. Next up, we pivot to the Chicago Bears at the Dallas Cowboys in Jerry's World. In this matchup, I'm willing to fire up both quarterbacks. Now, I understand Justin Fields, people are going to be like, Nick, you're overreacting to one good game out of Justin Fields. Now, if you actually look at that game and the prior 2 games for fantasy football, Justin Fields has looked legitimately good for fantasy football. Now, I know Justin Fields has this issue where he just stares one wide receiver down, throws the ball, and if that one read isn't open, then typically he struggles. But it appears that the team has opened up the playbook for him. They have installed a scheme that works for Justin Fields. They're not just throwing him out there and hoping that their scheme works. They're trying to scheme around what Justin Fields does the best. And now we're seeing a lot more Justin Fields rushing upside when compared to last season. I think Justin Fields is definitely a startable quarterback this week up against the Cowboys. Had it have been a more positive matchup, I would be banging the drum aggressively for Justin Fields this week. But because it's the Cowboys defense that I think is pretty good, Justin Fields is definitely worthy of a start, but he's not a guy I'm aggressively screaming to the mountaintops for you to start. Dak Prescott comes back after missing a multitude of weeks up against the Lions, and he doesn't necessarily disappoint in real life, but he does disappoint in fantasy football purposes. The Bears defense looked incredible up against the Patriots on Monday Night Football. I don't think that's the Bears defense we should get used to at this point. They're still not all that great. I think Dak Prescott has a decent game here, but it does appear that the team wants to run the ball more than they did last year when Dak Prescott was healthy. Next up, we move to the Miami Dolphins at the Detroit Lions, and I'm willing to start both quarterbacks in this game as well. For the Dolphins, Tua Tagovailoa, and for the Detroit Lions, Jared Goff. Now, my biggest issue with Tua Tagovailoa for fantasy football is that as a Dolphins fan, I watch all these games. It appears that when the Dolphins are in a game that they know that they can win, for example, up against the Steelers, up against the Patriots, they don't necessarily step on the gas. Mike McDaniel doesn't just go for the kill shot early on because realistically, the Dolphins should absolutely butt-fuck the Lions defense. The Lions have the worst defense, #1 in points against, and they already had their bye in the National Football League. So realistically, with Jalen Waddle, with Tyreek Hill, with Raheem Mostert, with Mike Gesicki, with Cedric Wilson, Trent Sherfield, with all of this speed, they should kick the ever-living shit out of the Lions. But Mike McDaniel never steps on the gas, fucking puts the pedal to the metal, like in Fast and Furious when they hit the button and the NOS goes off and you go super fast. They don't do that. They don't just kill their opponent. And that is going to be the hard part about this game because the Dolphins defense is hurt. So if Jared Goff is able to push the narrative, push this game to be a back and forth tit for tat affair, then Tua might be the #1 quarterback on the week. But if the Lions aren't able to pressure them, aren't able to push them into a very high-scoring game, that I don't think Tua is necessarily a top 10 quarterback despite me loving the matchup. The Dolphins' defense is incredibly banged up right now. Their defense still plays good even when banged up. I'll give them the credit. Josh Boyer is an excellent defensive coordinator. So I think Jared Goff is still able to play good in this game. Hopefully it's a bounce-back spot because he has been putrid his last 2 starts. Next up, we move to the Arizona Cardinals at the Minnesota Vikings. And this week on Thursday at midnight, so I guess a Friday at 12 a.m., whatever the fuck you want to call it, Call of Duty is released. And we all know that Kyler Murray, the king of Call of Duty, the king of Warzone, FaZe Kyler, struggles mightily during Double XP weekend and during when Call of Duty releases. Now I know, Nick, this is just a stupid narrative the internet came up with. And sure, I think it's stupid too, but there's still some truth to it. There is still some slight truth that Kyler legitimately struggles the games immediately following Call of Duty's release. Now, could he break it this year? Could he just smack the ever-living dog piss out of the Minnesota Vikings 100%? So I'm still going to start him. But just so you know, if he ends up shitting the bed, just remember what Nick told you. Just remember that I told you that, hey, Kyler typically struggles for for the next 2 games after Call of Duty comes out. For the Vikings, we got Mr. You Like That Kirk Cousins of the Minnesota Vikings. Sadly, we did not get to watch Kirk Cousins last week because their team was on a bye. Kirk Cousins is basically the definition of mid at the quarterback position. If you Google mid quarterback, a picture of Kirk Cousins just shows up. He's probably not going to have a top 5 game here, but he probably won't disappoint you. He'll probably be in the range of quarterback, I would say, 9 through 14. Will have a decent game. He won't win you your week, but he also won't lose you your week. That's just the typical Kirk Cousins experience, but you will get at least 1 or 2 games a year where Kirk Cousins legitimately fucks you completely over, but most of the time, that's a primetime game. Next up, we move to the Las Vegas Raiders going up against the New Orleans Saints in New Orleans. But before we break down this game at the quarterback position, I would like to give you guys a quick word from our friends and our sponsor over at BetMGM. They have a no-brainer NBA, the National Basketball Association, offer for you. If you are brand new to BetMGM, and you click on the link in the video description down below or in the pinned comment, if you bet $10 on any pre-game NBA moneyline game tonight, so you place it on one of the teams tonight, they don't even have to win. If a 3-pointer is made in the NBA tonight, you will receive $200 in free bets, which is guaranteed to happen. It's that simple. Make sure that you take advantage of this offer now because it's going to be gone in 2 weeks. So make sure you take advantage of it now before it disappears again. You got to bet $10 on any pre-game money line in the NBA, and you will receive $200 in free bets if a 3-pointer is hit tonight in any game in the NBA, which is guaranteed to happen. So please make sure you guys do check that out with the link in the video description or in the pinned comment. Again, this is a no-brainer offer. And then you don't have to bet those free bets on the NBA. You can bet it on the NFL, MLB, any sport you could bet the free bets on, but you have to bet the pregame moneyline bet on the NBA. Back on into things, we got the Raiders versus the New Orleans Saints here. Derek Carr is going to be a start for me. Derek Carr is a lot like Kirk Cousins, but to me, he just has a little bit more upside. The Saints defense just got the ever-living shit beat out of them by Kyler Murray in prime time. I think Derek Carr has a pretty solid spot here, and the Raiders are probably one of the more underrated teams in the NFL because their win total doesn't tell you at all how good this team could be when hitting on all cylinders. Andy Dalton, despite the fact that he threw roughly 1 million interceptions up against the Arizona Cardinals in prime time, still had an excellent performance. I don't think that famous Jameis Eat a W Winston will be returning in this matchup, which sucks, but hey, Andy Dalton did look good that week, and up against the Raiders defense isn't very sharp. I think Andy Dalton could be a sneaky good quarterback this week. Next up, we got the New England Patriots at the New York Jumbo Jets, and Patriots fans all over Twitter are complaining, oh my God, Mac Jones's pass hit the sky cam line. So on ESPN, they have the sky cam. There's like wires that are attached to the camera. Obviously, the camera doesn't just fucking float up there. Shocker. I know you knew that. And the ball hit the wire, allegedly, and trickled a little bit, and then it was intercepted. Patriots fans have a lot of excuses. With that said, we have no idea who the starting quarterback is. I don't even think we'll know until Sunday, and they might implore the good old college football strategy of using 2 quarterbacks, and you know what they say? When you use 2 quarterbacks, when you have 2 quarterbacks, you actually don't even have one. So Mystic Mac Jones and Zappy have to be a sit because they could be pulled at any point. Zach Wilson has not played the best for the Jets. Despite that, the Jets keep winning games. Is Zach Wilson the guy for the future? I'm not too sure, but he's definitely not the guy this week up against a stout Patriots defense. The thing about Zach Wilson is, though, maybe they will look to pass the ball a little bit more without Breece Hall. Next up, we move to the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Philadelphia Eagles. Here it is pretty obvious you want to be starting Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL right now, as well as for fantasy football. He also is playing up against the Steelers. I think that the Steelers defense looked good up against the Dolphins, but the Eagles are on a whole nother level. They are right now the only undefeated team in the NFL. They are one of the best, if not the best team in the NFL. I don't think record necessarily always dictates like how much better. Like the Eagles have not lost a single game. The Bills have lost 1 game. Does that mean that the Eagles are way better than the Bills? I don't necessarily think so, but Jalen Hurts has looked incredible. They have so many weapons to throw the ball to, and Jalen Hurts has so much rushing upside. The Steelers defense has looked better as of recent. I'll give it to him, but they will never be the same without TJ Watt. TJ Watt will not be back this week, and Jalen Hurts should be humming as a top-end quarterback in fantasy this week. Kenny Pickett has shown some promise and has shown some rushing upside, But up against the Eagles defense, this Eagles defense has looked incredibly legitimate. The Eagles defense might be the best part of their team, and their offense is one of the best in the fucking league, which just shows how good the Eagles are. They're so well-rounded, like Kim Kardashian. So here, I'm going to go ahead and sit Kenny Pickett, even though I think he's actually going to have a pretty decent career. But again, fantasy football, it's not about the career. This is redraft fantasy. We're just talking about this week. I don't think he has a big game. Next up, we move to the Les Titans at the Houston Texans. In this game, I don't want to be starting either Ryan Tannehill or Davis Mills. Ryan Tannehill is currently banged up going into this game. He was banged up in their matchup last week. He ends up gutting through it. Malik Willis plays for like a second. He hands the ball to Malik Willis. Malik Willis fumbles. All they need to do is hand the ball to Derrick Henry roughly 25 times, and they win this game by 24. So I don't think Ryan Tannehill is going to have to do much here, and I don't think they're going to ask him to do much considering he's banged up. Davis Money Mills is not the worst quarterback in the NFL, but he's far from the best. He's roughly his neck size away from being the best, which is incredibly large gap because that dude's neck is fucking incredibly big. Davis Mills up against the Titans defense. The Titans defense does look pretty decent. I just don't really trust them. And again, I don't think anyone thought that I was going to say that you should start Davis Mills. Next up, we got the Commanders at the Indianapolis Colts. The debut of Sam Ehlinger. We're back. The Texas is back, baby. Sam Ehlinger up against the Commanders. The Commanders won the game last week against the Packers. Round of applause for them. Heineke looked good in that game, but I don't think the Commanders' defense is necessarily some world beaters. I know they played good against Aaron Rodgers, but this doesn't look like the same Aaron Rodgers from the past. But at the end of the day, I think Sam Ehlinger could actually have a good game here. Like, I think he's sneaky. He has a lot of rushing upside. We saw it at Texas in college, but am I betting on that for him to have a good enough performance to be start-worthy in his first ever start in the NFL with how shit the Colts have looked? The answer is no. Heineke, if you are in a deeper league, you could talk yourself into starting him. Taylor Heineke is one of the most fun quarterbacks to watch in the NFL. He has rushing upside, and he basically just has fun out there. He doesn't think too much about anything. I don't think he thinks really at all. He just fucking throws the ball deep down the field. He uses the Dan Marino philosophy, which is pick a guy and let that fucker fly, and he does it. He does it. He just says, fuck it. Terry McLaurin's out there somewhere and throws it deep. It's incredibly fun to watch. Not the best for fantasy, but if there was a week where he plays pretty solid, I think it would be this week up against the Colts, even though he did look good up against the Packers last week. Next up, we got the 49ers at the Rams, and I tweeted this out prior to making this video. I said, who would you rather start in fantasy football this week? You should follow me on Twitter, by the way, at NotoriousFNTSY. You should also hit the subscribe button on today's video and the like button. You've made it this far. You clearly enjoyed it if you are new. So I asked, hey, who would you rather start this week? Jimmy Garoppolo, Jimmy G-Spot, Jimmy Pornstar, or Matthew Stafford? And a wide margin of people said Jimmy Garoppolo, and I completely agree. Matthew Stafford is a start this week, but he is at the bottom of the barrel. I don't want to start him at all. But the problem is, once you get into the guys that are sits, it's almost like you could talk yourself. You could do the mental gymnastics, the angel on my shoulders telling me all this positive shit. Like, oh, they're coming off the bye. Here's the time for Matthew Stafford to step up. Maybe the offensive line is going to look better. I know the offensive line's banged up, but this is the game where they get right. And maybe the angel's correct, but the devil on my other shoulder is telling me that Matthew Stafford has been cheeks this year. So to kind of focus back in on the central point of what I'm saying here, I trust Jimmy Garoppolo significantly more. I would start Matthew Stafford in some scenarios, but I'm not overly excited to do so, where I am pretty excited to play Jimmy Garoppolo. This Rams defense has not looked like what they looked like last year. Next up, we got the Giants at the Seattle Seahawks. Daniel Jones, Danny Dimes, Danny Fumbles, Danny Stumbles has looked a lot more like Danny Dimes this year. This Giants offense has been humming at all capacities, firing at all cylinders under Brian Daboll. Daniel Jones had a legitimately amazing performance last week up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. This week, he faces one of the worst, if not the worst defense in the NFL in the Seattle Seahawks. I love this matchup for Danny Dimes. He has so much rushing upside. He has more rushing yards this season than Najee Harris. You hate to see that if you drafted Najee Harris, but you love to see it if you picked up Danny Dimes off the waiver wire. This matchup could be incredibly high scoring. Geno Smith is going to be a start this week for me. Geno also has some sneaky rushing upside. He will be without DK Metcalf this week, which obviously is a huge blow because of how good DK Metcalf is, but I ultimately do not believe that is going to derail Geno Geno Smith into having a bad performance here. I think he does just fine up against the Giants defense, and thus he is a start-worthy quarterback this week, pretty close to being inside of the top 10. Next up, we move to the Green Bay Packers at the Buffalo Bills on Sunday Night Football. We got Mr. Discount Double Check coming off of a pretty mid performance up against the Washington Commanders. Now, the biggest difference between Tom Brady and Rodgers this year, while everyone is kind of hounding, beaten down on both of these guys, Rodgers has been he's not been elite for fantasy football, but he hasn't been, outside of that week 1 game, he hasn't been a complete disaster for fantasy football, where Tom Brady has been about as useful as fucking using a condom that's already broken and trying not to have a child, okay? That is the situation that we are in with Brady compared to Rodgers. So Rodgers realistically is significantly safer this week, despite the fact that he has a much worse matchup. This Buffalo Bills defense, when healthy, looks a lot more healthy now, is going to go on a roll, and I think Aaron Rodgers struggles, but I still think he has a start-worthy game. Josh Allen, you already know, you're going to start him every single week. Final game here, we got the Cincinnati Bengals at the Cleveland Browns on Monday Night Football. Joe Shiesty is going to be a start in this game. Joe Burrow is also one of those guys where you don't even have to think twice about it, you're starting him. Joe Burrow has really stepped it up as of recently. The offensive line has looked significantly better, and with the amount of weapons that this guy has around him, he is a must-start quarterback weekly. Then we go to Jacoby Brissett, who has been just about all right this season. The Bengals defense has looked strong enough to where I don't want to start Brissett, but again, he's kind of one of those fringe guys where he's not listed as a start, but you could talk yourself into playing him this week. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, make sure you hit that subscribe button as well as that like button down below. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. And again, make sure you check out the BetMGM NBA no-brainer offer. If you are a brand new user to BetMGM, click on the link in the video description or in the pinned comment, and you bet $10 on any pregame money line, you'll win $200 in free bets if anyone hits a three-pointer in the NBA tonight. So please make sure that you guys check that out. Also, check out our brand new Discord, link down below in the video description as well as in the pinned comment. I love you guys all so much. I hope you have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, good boy.